So I would say the one thing that I had to work on reducing was procrastination, because procrastination is an illness, because you just procrastinate, and you don't get things done. And when you kind of break that down, success is so simple, because it's just doing the things that you know you need to do when you need to do them. And what stops us all? Procrastination. And if you can reduce that, suddenly you start to tick off these small goals that then have a massive compound effect in the future. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing that even to this day I would still work on it, and I would advise everybody to work on that. Step into that.
So what would you say, going into trading, what would you say like the final hurdle was for you to reach consistency?
The final hurdle, it really came down to just going all in. So it wasn't, I was my own hurdle, put it that way. Okay. So I thought that there was just an extra little thing that I could learn, and then, that's going to do it. If I can learn just a little bit more about that, that's going to do it. But the truth is, I just wasn't all in. Okay. And when I went all in, I started to understand more about what I thought I knew. So for example, my knowledge, I thought, I know my patterns, I know this, I know that structure. There's something else, I don't know what it is. The moment I went all in, suddenly I knew the patterns better. And as a side effect, as a coincidence, it's not a coincidence, I started to become better. So it was really that just going all in, going fully committed, that helped. You start to see things differently. You start to look at something that you thought you knew, you now know even better. And it's just having that all-in mindset with no distractions, just going all in with it. So I would say that's the biggest thing for me. I mean, Neil, how have you found that yourself as well? Did you find that kind of transition when you were, you've been all in from pretty much the very beginning, haven't you?
Yeah, but for me, I actually found that when I had a more structured routine, I found it easier to go all in, which might sound almost counterintuitive, but for me, I always assume that when I go full-time and when I have all this free time available to me, then it's just going to be easier. And, more hours in front of the screen is going to equate into better percentages and better monetary returns. And it just went the other way. So, I needed that structure. And then it took a few months to get back to that point. But when you do, then, you realise that if you really want this, you have to discipline yourself, because no one else is going to hold you accountable. And you have to go all in yourself.
Yeah. So essentially the last hurdle is sometimes can be yourself.
So in terms of distractions, what would you say is the biggest distraction for you?
TV, things like that. No, it could be so many things. Netflix, things like friends, all those kind of things. The biggest distraction actually for me was because I wasn't really that involved in social media at that point. It wasn't even really a big thing at that point. It might have been, I just didn't know about it. But my biggest distraction was just going out on the weekends and things like that, spending time with friends and feeling like if I'm not there, then I'm going to lose friendships and things like that. Okay. But then I started to look at older groups and stuff, and even just speaking with my brother, and he's a little bit older than me, and he would see people that he hasn't met for a while that he used to be friends with, and they would be doing nothing with their life. And I remember him saying to me it's the same stuff. You hang around with these people and you keep doing it, they're not ambitious, they're not doing what they need to do, and you feel like you just have to stay friends and do that. And then guess what? You don't push to a new level. So what I did, I had to make those sacrifices. Am I still friends with a lot of my childhood friends now? I still am. Because just because not all of them are millionaires and things like that doesn't mean they don't have good morals and good values. So there's nothing wrong. You don't need to just cut out all of your friends. I've got some great, really great friends that are happy for me and things like that for success. But I would say the biggest distraction was just putting too much emphasis on have to be at that party, have to be at that event, have to be at this and that. And that was a massive distraction. Once I cut that out, I started to enjoy the Saturday nights, Friday nights, just putting in the work and getting ahead. And there's something amazing about working to early hours in the morning and things like that, just putting the work in. So that was massive for me.
So would you say there was a conscious decision to filter out friends, or was it more of a distance over time?
It was more of a distance over time, and I think the biggest thing is, and I've heard it so many times, audit your circle. You are the 5 people that you hang around with. That was a really big thing back then. That's been around for a long time. So I kind of knew that eventually they say that even one bad fruit will affect the rest of the bowl. You have to understand that in order to get somewhere, sometimes you have to remove yourself from a situation. So I didn't kind of consciously pick out that person's bad for me, that person's bad for me. It wasn't really like that. You do it unconsciously, you know. You gravitate towards successful people, like-minded people, and you distance yourself from people that don't share the same morals and values. I feel like that is a natural progression. If there's someone in your life that is toxic, then it has to be conscious. So you need to say, get the hell away from me, because you're not gonna, help me achieve my goals. You're actually dragging me the other way. I think that's when you need to make the decision to say, like, no, I'm not going to spend time. I think the rest of it is just a natural progression. Okay. Every person's situation is going to be different. Some people are around people that are really supportive. Some people have a really bad time and they've got like friends that are really, really negative. I wouldn't say I've had that side of things. We just didn't share the same values, and I knew I needed to separate myself or just sacrifice more of my time away from them to then go on and be more successful.
Sounds good. What about yourself, Neil? Similar, or was it a conscious decision to filter out people?
I'd say it's quite similar to what Mark said, in that, with time, you don't have to become a social recluse completely. It's just, if you're going out 4 weekends in a month, maybe cut it back to 3 or even 2, and then use that spare time effectively. Your friends, your true friends, aren't going to drop off overnight if you miss 1 or 2 parties. Your true friends will be there to support you and understand what you're trying to achieve. And then it's more like your associates. They're the sort of ones that are going to start to peter off with time. But at the end of the day, if they're not really bringing value to your life, and they're the ones that are holding you back from you taking that next step to achieve your goals, then really do you want to keep them around in the bigger picture? Possibly not. So, like what Mark said, like, it comes with time. But if someone is toxic, if you've got like a toxic friend or ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, you consciously have to make that decision to like get them out of your life, because what we do with trading, it requires a lot of mental clarity, and a toxic environment, whether it be at home or in a relationship or something, can really cloud your judgment. So it's best to get yourself as far away from that as possible.
And just try and reduce it. Some people can't, right? They can be in situations where their family is toxic. You can't just get rid of your family, So you have to almost have your time to then just use that time for yourself, and you're going to have your own time, right? So use that wisely. If it means you have to go out of the house and go to the library and then put in some work, then that is what's necessary to be done, because your family still love you. They just might not be supportive of you of your goals, and that it is what it is. Everyone's got a different type of situation, but you need to realise, well, when you're successful, you can then show them that it was possible and you can help them. It all comes from a position of love, because they're only trying to do that because they want to protect you, not realising that protection is actually sometimes holding you back. And I think that's normal. You just have to take that decision for yourself. I think that's massive. That's
the great thing with Forex as well. All you really need is your laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. So it's not like an office job, a 9 to 5, where you have to be in a location at each day. You can make that conscious decision and remove yourself from those situations if you need to. Go somewhere quiet where you can get clarity, get focus, and progress from there.
Did you ever feel sort of lonely during that process, because you sort of had to like pull away from like the negativity? Like, how did you handle that, like just being you and yourself, and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, trading is quite a lonely pursuit many times. That's why it's so great that we've got this incredible community here. But I think for me I was spending more and more time focusing on my trading and like learning how to acquire this skill, but it was time that I would have spent alone almost anyway. So it's a conscious decision to, all right, I'm going to spend an hour backtesting and watch 2 pieces of content tonight rather than 6 episodes on Netflix. So you're probably going to be spending a lot of that time on your own anyway, but you can choose how best to use it and most like productively use it. And then if I feel like I've got to the end of the week and I've made a lot of progression, then if I want to go out and see my friends, then I do that. And you kind of find over time you find a nice balance between the two. So I think as we get a bit older, you spend less time socializing, and then you spend more time with family and things like that. So you are at fewer parties, but you find a balance.
So question for you, Neil, what was it like going full time, and how do you find that transition from 9 to 5 into full-time trading?
I actually personally found it quite difficult.
Okay.
I really thought that it was going to be this nice smooth transition over from my office job into full-time trading, but I think for the first time in as long as I could remember, I went from a very structured regimented regime each day into having like no accountability. There was no, I didn't have to be anywhere at any time, didn't have any boss telling me what I had to do. And that reflected very negatively in my trading. So I fell into a lot of bad habits, got very lazy, I was procrastinating a lot. When I had my job, I was so structured with my day that each block of time I had to make the most of it because time was limited. But now I would have an entire day ahead of me, and it's like, well, I'll maybe do a bit of back testing and I'll watch some content, but you know, I wasn't structuring my time very well. And it actually took me probably 3 months all in to like really find a good routine that worked for me. So, but now that I'm the other side of it, I'm so grateful that it happened, because we're humans at the end of the day, we're not machines, we have emotions, we're fallible. So it's, I'm a better trader and a better person for that difficult time that I had, and I wouldn't change it now even if I could. So, and for some people might transition over perfectly and get it within a week. Some people it might take a lot longer. So everyone's going to find it, you know, different stages at different times. But yeah, for me it was not as smooth as I thought it would be. So, yeah.
Just comes down to routine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the one bit of, you know, advice to push out to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're full time or not, and it's usually, if you've got loads of things on and you study and do things like that, you will adapt. You will find a way to adapt, and your routine can never go out of sync. And if it does, that's fine. You just always have to go back to that balanced state where you remember what got you there in the first place.
Yeah. One thing that I will say that really helped me regain that structure was setting daily goals. Now, I was to an extent doing it before I went full time, but now that I had so much time to fill in the day, that's where it really came into its own, and that really helped get me on the right track, build that momentum. And you just start off the day with a few things, some daily affirmations, half an hour of reading or something like that, but it builds some momentum and it gives you a little like boost of confidence, and you start your day the right way, and then from there it just gets easier and easier to keep that momentum moving forwards.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like in the mornings, it's like that those little wins will compound into like a massive growth.
Exactly.
So simple things like making your bed, drinking water when you wake up. So those are little things that I do in my routine, because I'm balancing like uni and trading as well as like personal branding things. So I think the things that helped me was like routine, and I think the biggest thing for me was mindset. And Mark always talks about the perspective and seeing it like out of like opportunities and like the growth side of things, how you don't take things negatively but see it as like an opportunity for growth. So that's something that really helped me, was just my mindset towards something.
That's good, that perspective is good. I mean, how would you find, you know, touching on that, because of course you study as well, how have you found that process when you like, you have to study so much and then you've got, let's say, content to watch and learn and things, how have you found that process?
I've started to like run towards it. So when I feel stressed, it sounds cheesy, but I say like, you know, I'm blessed to be in this opportunity that I'm actually learning this skill, and then to be in the opportunity to be having a degree. So I try and be as grateful as I can, even if I'm super stressed out. And coming from that mindset really helps.
So rather than, you know, oh, I have to do this, that I get to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you know,
100%.
a lot of successful people say the same thing. I get to do this, you know, I get to log in and do that. Some people can't do that, you know, log in on a nice laptop, watch at the comfort of your own home. Like, we are blessed. So I don't even think it is cheesy. I think you just have a great perspective, and you've used that to fuel everything that you're doing, and that's going to pay you dividends in the future, because not everybody has that mindset. And I think that you doing that leads by example for a lot of people that might have a kid, or they might be studying like yourself, and they need to find a way to balance it, but running towards it. You know, I love how you put that. It's awesome.
What about yourself, Michael? Because now you've cut down your working hours to be part-time to focus more on trading. Did you find that you got into a rhythm straight away, or did it take some time to adjust?
I would say, like yourself, so it definitely took a few months, especially with the strictness of coming from a 9 to 5 to part-time. It was quite tough at first, but especially implementing things like time blocking throughout the day, that definitely helped me.
Yeah.
Definitely helped me.
Yeah, I also, like when you say time blocking as well, sometimes I put my phone on airplane mode or just leave it in another room, because you can be watching content and playing on your phone at the same time, and then before you know it, 5-10 minutes have gone by. Mark said something which you really should have like taken value from, but you've kind of half heard it and missed it. So yeah, so making the most of your time. Like I just get rid of my phone when I'm trying to watch something, when I'm trying to learn something, or when I'm doing back testing. Yeah, phone's in another room.
Yeah.
I like to think of it like this, right? Imagine like watching content and scrolling through Instagram or doing something else is almost like reading a book and watching the television at the same time.
Yeah.
Like how could you expect to absorb that book if you was doing something else at the same time? You just couldn't. I know like we try to think that it's more efficient and we can multitask, but sometimes it's better to just go all into that bit and just 30 minutes of your time is just focused on that part, or 30 minutes of just reading. I've read before for like 2 hours and barely absorbed the thing because I'm just distracted. I'll put the book down, do something else. I've retained nothing. So it's good. That time blocking is massive, and it's now even more a part of my success now. My success is more growing from processes rather than, because once you're good at something you can generate and you can do something. It's now about how do you maintain that and how do you improve that, and that normally comes down to your process of doing things, which is what I absolutely love.
That's a good point, because I used to find myself doing the same thing. Like, it's super tempting, right, when your phone's there to check it while you go through content. I used to do that all the time. The last few months don't do that anymore. It's either in another room or in a drawer, so it definitely helps.
And then where you've got no distractions, you can't, because you physically have to go get it out the door. And then like if you're walking up and you're getting up to go and get it out of the room, that's when you know you need to make a tweak in your mindset. It becomes an addiction, doesn't it? And I think that does happen in things like social media and things like that. So it's so important to, if you do focus on social media, that you also spend the time and a more important amount of time on what's actually going to make you consistent in trading and things like that, which is just putting in the work, getting in the charts and just being involved. There's nothing better than having that live experience in the markets on a subconscious level.
So I've got a question for you two as students. What do you like about the community that we have right here at Falcon?
So many things, but I think just the genuine nature of people. So for an example would be, we've got the Slack group, right? So just jumping on Skype call with so many different members throughout Falcon, and I feel like that's helped me within my training so much, because you're seeing so many different perspectives and picking up those 1% tweaks over and over again, which I think is massive.
Like everyone in the community is like so goal driven, like success, everything, ambitious, and it's like ever since I joined the community I started doing things that I never thought I would do, like reading, meditating. I've spoken to people like across the world, like recommending me these like self-development books which really helped me with things like anxiety, and everyone's just like, you're just learning and it just feels natural, because the whole reason I sort of also joined was I couldn't find people in my circle, like in my area, that were like-minded in terms of like goals and trading. So that's why I resorted to social media, and then that's how I found Falcon.
I think we, now that we're in this sort of bubble which we're in, I think we forget just how niche and how different Forex trading is. Not many people really even understand what it is that we do. So that's why it's so important to take this community which we've got and really leverage it to the fullest capacity that you can. So like you said, like jumping on Skype calls with different people, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about trading and strategy and things like that, your analysis. It can be more of a accountability sort of phone call, or just a general chit chat and catching up with people, making new friends, new connections, because trading can be quite a lonely journey. So you've got all of these people who are all on like a similar goal, they've got a similar vision, similar mindset, who will never judge you and think, trading, you can't make money, or you're weird if you do things like yoga or meditating and things like that. Everyone's on the same mission as you, and so you really have to utilize that to the best you can. So I think we're so fortunate to have such a strong community, such a positive community as well, because I think that's actually quite rare to find in this industry.
100%.
So getting a bit deeper for you now, Mark. So imagine you're 80, 90 or 100 years old. You've achieved everything you want in life. What one piece of life advice would you give to someone starting out on their journey, or early family member or something like that?
That's actually a really on the spot on question. I would say that just don't worry about what other people think of you. And if I think about all of it, there's so many little bits that I would say, little bits of advice and things like that, but there's an old quote, and I think it goes something like, when you become content with yourself, you reach a dangerous level of freedom internally. And I think that comes from not really caring about what people think. Because when you don't have these insecurities, or you don't set goals based off of impressing other people that you don't even like, or they don't like you, and things like that. So I would say step into your passion of what you truly want, and don't be so hard on yourself to judge yourself, or to set these goals that if you're not a millionaire by 25 that you failed in life and things like that. I think people are way too hard on themselves. So if I could, picture myself then, and then even tell my 18-year-old self, for example, I would just say, just forget about what people think. I've done it, I've been there, where I try to, get things because I know subconsciously, I'm not conscious to it, but I know people are going to think, oh, that's amazing. And we all do it, and no one wants to talk about it, no one wants to admit it, but they do. And I feel like those people are very unhappy. And I remember when I got my new coffee machine, and then someone was asking me, you seem more excited over your coffee cup than your McLaren. And I was like, I haven't driven it for 3 weeks. And I think we start to obsess over these materialistic things too much, and that's because I feel content. I really do. I feel like so good in myself and what I'm doing with Falcon and things like that, and my trading is just growing to a whole new level. And being excited about the little things, I wish I'd done that earlier, because I would say I spent a good 3-4 years obsessing over things that weren't really important, and that was more emotional. I was far unhappy at that point. And now I'm happy, I'm happy over the littlest of things. For example, even finding, a plain black t-shirt that I like, and then buying 40 of them, just so I don't have to, literally, you guys know I've got a whole wardrobe with the same t-shirt because I like neutral colours, and it's I'm getting more excited, like I said, processes. So I would say just stop worrying about what other people think, focus on what you truly want to do, and never do something to impress people. And how you're making your wealth and your money is far more important than the actual amount of money that you do make and the legacy that you leave and things like that. So just step into that. So that's an awesome question.
It's a great answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great answer.
So Mark, what has been a negative habit that you've had to drop?
I would say that it's not really something I'd have to drop, but more so something I had to reduce, which is procrastination. And I think I think everybody procrastinates to an extent, and that's something that I used to be a massive procrastinator, and that would ultimately just hinder what I'm doing. So it's not something I had to drop or get rid of, because I can still procrastinate till this day, and I think that I know far more successful people than myself, and they still procrastinate. Doesn't mean that I don't get things done. Of course I do. It's just that there's almost a level of people that procrastinate a lot tend to not really be that successful, and people that don't procrastinate as much tend to be more successful. The reason is because they get stuff done. And something just so simple as procrastinating to get ready, make dinner and things like that. We procrastinate everywhere, and we just don't get things done. So I would say the one thing that I had to work on reducing was procrastination, because procrastination is an illness, because you just procrastinate and you don't get things done. And when you kind of break that down, success is so simple, because it's just doing the things that you need to do when you need to do them. And what stops us all? Procrastination. And if you can reduce that, suddenly you start to tick off these small goals that then have a massive compound effect in the future. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing that even to this day I would still work on it, and I would advise everybody to work on that. Step into that.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like being aware of these, when you're procrastinating, and then
Yes.
doing something about it. Because I feel like a lot of us, even myself, I'm unconsciously procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm kind of not being responsible. I'm kind of avoiding work,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm just not really taking action or being proactive when I know I'm being unproductive.
That's really a really good point how you
Yeah.
put it. What helped me was 5 daily goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally what would happen is that I would tick off quite a lot of goals, and it would get to 5 p.m, 6 p.m, and they'd be done. And then I would notice that when it's 9 p.m, 10 p.m, and there's still 2 more things on there, I'd be I've been procrastinating all day. I would still get stuff done. So you see how you can still be successful, but if you develop a habit of being a procrastinator, you'll take longer, then that remainder will go over, and before you know it, something you could have done on a Monday still isn't done on a Friday. And that's where people get ahead quicker than others. And that's where people that make massive growth, they commit, go all in, set goals, and just tick it off slowly. So yeah, you're right, it's about being consciously aware and having something practical to deal with that, which I believe is setting 5 daily goals, ticking them off, and actually being aware, no, I've done it. How can you be a procrastinator if you're sticking to 5 daily goals? So simple yet so effective. So great questions.
What about you, Neil?
Yeah, so firstly, to reiterate, writing daily goals, can't stress enough how important it is and how beneficial it is. But I've got a much more specific thing that I did that stopped me from like sort of holding myself back, and that was checking the monetary amount of like what profit I'm in on a trade. When I first started trading, it was always about the money, and it was like, oh, I've made £500 or I've made £1,000, and I would be scared of giving that money back to the market, so I'd be closing trades down manually. I hit £1,000, you know, and it's like, oh, it's 3 figures, close it down because I don't want to lose that. Then the trade goes on to make £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, right? So I was doing that over and over and over again. So a really simple tip that I did was just remove the section from my brokerage, so I couldn't actually see how much money my position was running in. And then even one step further, only ever going into my brokerage to actually put on or close a position. I would do everything else on TradingView. So this is just trying to bring it back to trading, to Forex, to make it a little bit more finance specific, but that really helped me. Just seeing on TradingView whether you're running in profit or in loss, and just seeing how it's going. And then you see the market from a more neutral standpoint. You're looking at it and you're not as biased in a way, you're not as scared, because yeah, okay, you might start to see a little bit of a correction, but you don't see what that is in monetary values, like what you're essentially giving back to the market. So you start making more informed and smart decisions rather than more emotional gut-based decisions. So that was super black and white, really easy for me to implement, and it made the world of difference.
Wow, that's powerful. I actually resonate with that, because on MetaTrader, what I use, I completely skip the middle button, which shows how much money you're making. So if when I see it, I don't look at it. But then I'll look. I can take it. It's less emotionally effective on me. Like if I'm seeing it in a percentage standpoint, instead of seeing the exact amount. So I either look at it like what you said, either through the charts or as a percentage.
Yeah, and it's so important because it doesn't matter how big or small your trading account is. You've got to get into the right habits early on. It's even better if you start with a small account and learn them habits. Make your mistakes, but learn the right habits on the small account and come at it from a scalable approach. We always talk about this in Falcon. It's like you've got to approach everything with that scale mindset. If you can get this right on £1,000 account, a £2,000 account, you know, it's much more achievable to then scale it up. And it doesn't really matter what the figures are in your account. If you get the habits right early on, they will transition through. If you're making bad mistakes, if you're making emotional decisions on £1,000, you're going to make them mistakes and more on £10,000, £100,000, £500,000 account, and it'll only come back to bite you even worse later down the line. So you're better off focus on getting yourself in the right place emotionally with trading on a smaller account, get into the right routines, and then build it out from there.
Even just finishing on that point actually of managing your trades either through the charts and percentage and things like that, it's so easy to get caught up into that, and you need to this idea that if you can make 10% on a £1,000 account, you can suddenly just make it on $1 million, isn't true, right? Because there's so many emotions that go through that, and it's normally the people that can't do that is because they've got such bad habits. So creating those good habits on smaller amounts of money is so important. Every decision that you make has to be based off of scale, which is why in the bootcamp, how many times did I repeat it? For a very good reason, because every decision you make needs to be at scale. It's easy to look back on a trade and be like, if I didn't close that and I let it pull back 6%, it then went on to make 26. So I shouldn't have banked, 8%, for example, or whatever it may be. Yeah. But in hindsight, if you're trading $500,000, for example, are you going to let that pull back, deal with it, be okay with it emotionally, and say, okay, it's fine? Probably not, because there always will be some sort of attachment towards money. Right? You've experienced it, I've experienced it, you guys have experienced it. When you're trading money, money's involved, and as that scales, if you can create good habits now, so powerful in the future, and that then it doesn't matter what money you're trading. So I think it's more so. It's not that just because you can make 1,000, 10% on 1,000 that you can't make it on 100. It's your habits that you create on the £1,000 will ultimately be the difference, whether you can do that on, let's say, 100k, 300k, and then of course you scale accordingly. So no, awesome question. Right guys, so I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I absolutely loved it. It was so enjoyable just kind of having that discussion, conversations. You've all brought some incredible questions. I really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing those questions and those processes. I think that you've provided so much value for everybody watching. So Hannah, Michael, really appreciate it, honestly. It goes without saying you bring so much value to the community, and we really do appreciate it. And having Neil on for the first time has been awesome, so great questions. And I really hope you've enjoyed these episodes in this kind of series. We want to show you more behind the scenes and more of the impact that has really been made in this community right now. So many of you from the outside, you're looking and you're wondering, should I join a community? Join us for the right reasons. If you're serious and you want to get involved and surround yourself with like-minded people that are going to push you higher, I think it's evident that you're going to join the right community. But guys and girls, enjoy, stay tuned, we've got some exciting content in the works.